Going through the motions.
Hey, you're listening to Zoë Nutt, my guest on this episode of Unbeatable. Picture this in your mind. You're a happy-go-lucky kid. Everything is going great for you, but you start to notice that you can't hear as well as your brothers. Your parents start to notice that you're not learning, you're not speaking like every other child your age. And then at 8 years old, they take you in and you talk to a doctor who tells you you are losing your hearing. Pretty soon, you've lost all hearing in one ear. But wait, it gets worse. Because as a young woman, you wake up one day and you can't hear anything at all out of the other ear, not knowing if that hearing is ever going to come back. My guest, Zoë Nutt, went through a lifetime of struggling with hearing loss. But not only did she struggle through it well, she's turned it into a music career. Literally, she writes songs, she drops records. She's got a couple of releases that are out right now in spite of her progressive, degenerative hearing loss. Hey, if you're struggling, if you're going through some hard times, you're really going to be encouraged by what you hear in this episode of Unbeatable with Zoë Nutt.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life. You're listening to Unbeatable with Jeff Struker.
It's the holiday season. You look very festive today. For those of you who are driving and listening to this over your radio, she's coming into the studio from her home in Nashville. Thanks for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about your childhood and how you fell in love with music, because the people that recognize your name are immediately going to associate you with your country music career. But how did this love of music start for you?
Growing up, as a child, I never said, hey, I want to be a musician or a singer. I don't think I didn't really comprehend at the time that that's a real job. You
can make money doing that?
Yeah. I mean, it seemed a little pie in the sky. But growing up, I did really love music, especially lyrics, and it really all stemmed from my parents, and especially my dad. Growing up and driving us to school, he'd always play whatever music he liked and would ask me, what the lyrics meant to certain songs.
Really?
Yeah. He would do that with all of us. I have 3 younger brothers too, but he especially, I think, asked me a lot, and wouldn't let us out of the car unless we knew what that Johnny Cash song was about, or or whatever it may be. But so I think the love for lyrics really came from that, especially being someone who's grown up with hearing loss. Lyrics are the thing that's hardest to hear, but they're still the most important in my mind.
Did you start singing at a young age?
I'd always been singing. My grandmother, had a karaoke machine for a while and always had me singing Patsy Cline.
Awesome.
So I grew up singing in that respect, yes. But it wasn't until high school that I started getting into musical theater and taking voice lessons, making it, a more serious venture.
I just got this mental image right now of you and your grandmother hanging around singing Patsy Cline's I Fall to Pieces together. That must have been epic.
Oh yeah, it was. And I mean, yeah, it's pretty special. I don't even know if all my friends know much Patsy Cline. I feel lucky.
Yeah, hey, for everybody that's younger than 30 years old, Patsy Cline was a female musician who sang. I feel like I need to say that for a couple of people that have never even heard the name before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I go walking after midnight. Look it up.
Yeah. So Dad locked you in the car and basically said, you don't get out until you tell me the name of this song. I have now a goal for my children and grandchildren to set them on the road to superstardom, and it's to lock them in the car and not let them out until they know the name of the song.
Oh, and not just the name, the meaning of the song. That's it. Yeah. But no one ever really was thinking of it in a let's make Zoe a musician or anything like that. I think it was always how can we think about things in the world differently or look at something in a new light? Always that. He's an engineer. That's his mindset.
Well, engineers try to figure out the way things work and how to, how things fit together. maybe this had some impact on you. You don't just make music, but you also write music, and writing it takes a special skill set. I mean, let's be honest. Most of us, when we listen to music on the radio, it's the tune. It's also the words behind the tune, but we don't sometimes give as much attention to the words. Tell me a little bit about why you felt drawn to writing music instead of just performing other people's songs.
Yeah, I think growing up, I was definitely the bedroom poet type, always writing some poem down, some short story. And I think it really stemmed from that, and it grew into music. Because growing up, I wasn't very confident. I didn't really think I could be a singer, or I didn't have the big voice, or what I thought was the thing. But at the time, I was like, I know how to write. I love drawing. I love imagining other worlds, and just playing with words. So it really started from that.
So obviously, you grew up spending a lot of time listening to music, listening to the radio. Mm-hmm. And you've just alluded to this already. So for those people who don't know about your hearing loss, tell me a little bit about when you started to notice, how you started to notice, I think there's something wrong with my hearing.
Well, it started very young. My parents were the first to notice. When I was a child, I wasn't responding to them as much. And I don't know I think they figured it out by the time I was 4, that I had some sort of hearing loss. And by the time I was 8, I lost all hearing in my right ear. When I was little, I didn't really fully understand it. I just knew that the phone didn't work on that side, or,
Okay.
Yeah, so it started out with that. I think my first genuine memories of realizing I have hearing loss are those first memories of getting hearing tests in the sound booth, which is a little daunting when you're a child. And and there was a year before my hearing in my right ear completely went out, and I wore a hearing aid to school. So there was that moment where I'm wearing something that no one else is in the room, and I think that's where I was cognizant of it.
So your mom and dad kind of noticed, hey, something doesn't seem right when we're standing on this side of Zoë. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say it's something like that. Yeah, just as a child, I was just not hearing them, responding to them as quickly, and my speech was a little different. There were certain words and things I would just mispronounce that I shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can only imagine, how early did you start wearing the hearing aid?
I only had it for a year, and I guess that was when I was 7. And then that ear was completely deaf by that point. So the hearing aid was of no help.
Yeah.
I do wear another hearing aid in my other ear now, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But I started wearing that in college.
So you were 7 years old going to school, and every 7-year-old is nervous about everything because school is so new and everything is so intimidating. But you are going to school looking different than every other student in school. That had to be really rough for you for that year that you're wearing the hearing aid.
I think it. I don't know. I didn't remember anyone picking on me or anything like that. I think
Good
more
to
than
hear.
anything, yeah. I mean, I also had my little John Lennon circle glasses.
This is awesome.
That was a little more obvious.
Yeah.
But I think more than anything, the device itself, I don't know. I don't have a lot of memory on whether anyone picked on me or not. But more than anything, was just missing out on what people were saying. I was constantly feeling like I wasn't very smart, or even though I was smart, but I felt that these feelings of inadequacy easily.
If I heard you correctly, by 8-ish, you have basically completely lost your hearing in your right ear. Is that right?
Yes, profound hearing loss, completely gone.
And the doctors, do they give you any hope for recovering any of the hearing in your right ear?
No, they don't know why it occurred, why I lost that hearing in the first place, and it's probably those hair cells in my ear that are destroyed entirely. So unless stem cell research becomes extremely targeted towards hearing loss, they knew that wasn't going to come back.
So Zoe, you just already alluded to, so now you've lost hearing completely in your right ear, but your left ear you're starting to lose hearing in your left ear. Tell everybody when this happens, what was going on, and kind of just explain to your fans and those that are familiar with your music, what this was like, and still what you're going through.
Definitely. So when I did first lose the hearing in my right ear, the doctors had no reason to think that my left ear would be impacted in any way. And I just moved on with my life, and it was, difficult at times to hear, but it wasn't until I went to college that my left ear started deteriorating. And as fate should have it, I just changed degrees from a classical music major to a songwriting major. And that first semester of songwriting class, I woke up one day and I couldn't hear out of my left ear. It was sudden, and the timing couldn't have been worse or more of a moment that you could easily find yourself questioning your path. But I regained, I guess, a little of that hearing, and ever since I've been continually waking up and losing hearing. Just random days I'll just have lost another chunk of hearing, and it's progressively getting worse.
What are the doctors telling you about your left ear? Because at this point you have no hearing at all in your right ear. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then
Correct.
What are they telling you about your left ear now, and what does the future look like? Because this is your total deafness that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So, I did all the tests. I've done all the genetic tests, the autoimmune test, all, the scans. We cannot find out why my hearing is deteriorating in that left ear. And strangely enough, the doctors think they're separate issues.
Really?
We've guessed that maybe my right ear, the one that first went out, could have been related to cytomegalovirus, which is something you can get in utero. It may not be, though. There's no definitive way to know that. But that usually wouldn't occur again in your left ear in your 20s after such a long time. So the gap in time between the two ears losing hearing is what makes them think this might be two separate incidences. We don't know why it's happening, though. It's and I go to the best doctors. I've seen the people I need to see.
And when you started to lose some of the hearing in your left ear, let me make sure I get this right, in the ear that you still have a little bit of hearing, that's your left ear, correct?
Correct. The left ear at this point is about half deaf, along with tinnitus, and yeah.
Oh, man. You started writing, and you were in college, you're finishing up college, and you released your first album while this was still going on, right? In 2016, you released the album Like You?
So Like You, I did release in 2016, and let's see, I had just released that album. That was kind of my first step in the water on music and releasing songs. I want to make sure I get this timeline right, because they all start to blend together a little on the losses that I've had. But so I had the 2016 album Like You, which the title track is about my hearing loss. That was when I first had the first incident with my left ear. The first time I lost hearing in that left ear was around that time.
It had to be scary waking up, after being so aware of your hearing. Most of us, well, frankly, anybody who has good hearing typically takes it for granted. You have been aware of your hearing pretty much your entire life, right?
Yes.
And then you wake up and you are not able to hear at all out of the only ear left that has any hearing. That had to be scary. I can't tell you how proud I am, Zoe, for you to just keep getting up and making music, not knowing if you're going to be able to hear anything at all tomorrow when you drop your first album. But
thank you.
The hearing loss continues, right? So you have a progressive form of hearing loss. Tell us where it is today and kind of what this looks like for you right now when we're recording this episode.
Yes. So, as I've said, my hearing loss is idiopathic. We don't know why it's happening, and it's sensory neural. So I have been sometimes every year, sometimes multiple times a year, I will lose another chunk of hearing. And I know that probably eventually I'll go completely deaf. In 2018, this was probably a big moment for me. Was getting ready to release my latest album, How Does It Feel? I'd been recording it, and that December, I woke up one day and couldn't hear anything. I was in the studio and couldn't really hear anything.
Man.
I had to push pause on the record entirely. And at that point, I made some heavy decisions where I got my hearing aid, and I also decided to get cochlear implant surgery in my right ear. So I took an entire year off to do that before making music again and finally releasing that record. So that was probably the biggest moment and probably the scariest moment, knowing how serious this has become.
Yeah. How does it feel? It came out a couple of years ago, but you're working on this it ends up being almost 2 years. Is that correct?
Yes, because I had been working on it, recording it, massaging it, and then I had to just make a complete stop. And when I came back to it, there were, in some ways it was a blessing. I found new things that I wanted to include in the music or things I wanted to change. So, but yes, it took a little longer than I had hoped.
How did the latest record, How Does It Feel? How did that do when you released it? How well has it done in Spotify and Apple Music and online?
Yeah, it's made it on some Spotify playlists, some Apple Music playlists. A couple of my songs have made it onto like Apple Music's Best New Country Songs playlist, that sort of thing. But the funniest thing is, I think that right as I was releasing this record, finally ready to get it out in the world, got my implant on my side, it's working. COVID hits, and I think that was a strange time to release music, honestly. So, a time when you couldn't go out and play shows, you couldn't go to radio stations, that sort of thing. So it did force me to be creative on how I wanted to spread that music out.
Yeah, it's really hard to promote it when you're not able to sit down with anybody on a radio show, or to be able to be in a concert or promoting it. Yeah. I have said many times to our children when we were at the dinner table, like, if I had to choose between losing my sight and losing my hearing, it is no choice. It's easy for me. I would gladly lose my sight over my hearing. That's how important to me my hearing is. And that's not even a contest for me, because I love music. I love to listen to people. I love to hear conversations. It's one of the reasons why I'm got a set of headphones on and I'm listening to you right now. So I'm trying to imagine what this would have felt like for you when you're working on your second album and you're not sure if you're even going to be able to finish it. Well, what your future looks like, maybe not being able to hear anything at all. Can you describe a little bit of the anxiety, a little bit of the fear of not knowing tomorrow morning when you get up whether or not you will have any hearing at all?
Definitely. I think it has been really scary, and there are times where I've tried to, put on my tough face and obviously anything in your life, if you mull on it for too long, it can be more serious or feel heavier than it is. But I will say this was extremely difficult. The first time I lost my hearing was scary the first time I lost my hearing in my left ear in college was very scary, because I didn't know how fast it was going to degenerate. So that one, I think, was probably the scariest at the time that it happened, was that first time. Since then, it's been scary, but having my cochlear implant now gives me a little bit of solace. More than anything, like you said, hearing, it's it's our connection to the world in so many ways. It's how I communicate with my family. It's how I listen to music. It's, how I do pretty much anything. So it really did, I think, at times put me in a serious form of depression and anxiety at times, just inward kind of feeling. But I guess with social media and all of that, I've enjoyed being able to at least have some fun sharing it. I can laugh about a few things with it. But on top of just the hearing loss, the medication they put you on for it, Prednisone, which is a steroid that, if anyone's been on that, which I'm sure one of your listeners, I'm sure has, it's a pretty popular drug. It can make you feel even worse. So I think that really compounded it too, was, having this steroid that you're taking during the hearing loss, and then just knowing that all of your friendships and family members and everything you have could change drastically in a matter of months or days. And most of my friends, I don't think, understand it. Some do, but that was all definitely a difficulty, especially in college, finding people that understood. When I say, I'm randomly losing my hearing, they kind of look at you funny. It's a weird thing to explain. So I'd say it's been a journey. The one thing that, oddly enough, that I don't worry about is music. For some reason, I've never thought
Really?
I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
No, my mom will tell me that too. She's like, you worry about everything except the music part. And for some reason, it's scary, but maybe I don't want that seeping into that part of my life. I'm not sure, but for some reason, I've never thought I should stop this, or let's just make it a hobby,
Zoë, you are a modern day Beethoven who loses his hearing and ends up making some of his most famous music of all times. And when the crowd is going wild behind him, he doesn't even notice until they spin his chair around and he can see that people are actually applauding the music that he created. Yeah. Hey, it's Christmas time. We're right in the heart of it. Everywhere you go, people are listening to the Christmas music on the radio. It's that terrible Christmas music that you hear at the department stores. So I wanted to talk about Christmas memories and Christmas music for a few minutes. Tomorrow night is Christmas Eve in the United States. You got a favorite Christmas Eve memory, like one of those things, like that was the night that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, that you want to share with everybody?
That's fun. I do. Christmas Eve, have always spent at my grandmother's house growing up, with my cousins and my 3 younger brothers, and we all piled into like the 2 rooms.
And break out the karaoke machine, right? Because we are at grandma's house.
Oh, different grandma.
Oh, darn it.
Oh yeah. Thankfully, I have 2 amazing grandmas. But I think there's like 7 kids, stuffed in these rooms, and we're all listening for bells and different things. I think the morning of was always the funniest though, because my cousins liked to sleep in, and there's some rooms on one side of the living room, and there's another room on the other side of the living room. And each group of family, members were in each room, and we would be like yelling across the room, like, wake up, we'd just be in our room just giddy to get out. But they appreciated their sleep in the morning.
So you were the annoying cousin that was up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock on Christmas morning is what you're saying. And the rest of them were still sound asleep.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And I had 3 brothers. It was mob mentality there.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, of course. Let's talk about Christmas music for a little bit, because I have this little segment I like to do in the middle of the show. It's just to kind of help people understand a little bit about me, also get to know you a little bit better. So I want to talk about some of your favorite Christmas music or Christmas songs. I'm going to give you my top 5 Christmas songs of all time. But you don't have to give me 5, but I want you to just think while I'm talking, and you tell us a couple of your favorite Christmas pieces of all time for me. And I'm just going to do this kind of going from the bottom, from number 5 up to number 1. One of my favorite Christmas songs of all time is White Christmas. It really doesn't even matter who does it. It can be the Bing Crosby or the Elvis, or even, the some of the rock and roll versions of it. I like the song White Christmas. I love the Snoopy Christmas musical. So that whole, piano piece that Schroeder plays on the piano, I don't even know if there's a name for this thing, but when I hear that music in the background, I immediately start to think about the Charlie Brown Christmas special and that music that Schroeder is banging out on the piano in the background. One of my favorite Christmas songs is Mariah Carey. She makes like $2 million a year on one song, and it's the song All I Want for Christmas. But I also love the Christian hymns around Christmas time. One of my favorite is O Come, Emmanuel. But this may surprise you, Zoe. My favorite Christmas song of all times is actually a blues song. It was performed by the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which is like the greatest Christmas band in the history of the human race. And they've got a song called Music Box Blues. Now, if you're listening to this podcast today and you've never heard Music Box Blues, just go ahead and check it out on Apple Music or on Spotify. That song is probably one of my favorite songs of all time, not just my favorite Christmas song. I love it. It beats Schroeder on the piano for me any day. What about you, Zoe? Tell me a couple of your favorite Christmas songs.
Yeah, that last one, maybe I've heard it, but I'm going to have to look it up.
Oh, you got to go listen to it. You'll be hooked after the first note.
So, favorite Christmas songs. When you first said that, like the thing that popped in my head immediately, and I don't know if I truly have a top 5 list because it's really hard. There's so many good ones, but I immediately, my mind went to Christmas Vacation when Chevy Chase is in the attic looking at all his family videos, and that Christmas is the time of year for being with the ones we love, sharing so much joy and cheer, singing songs about Jesus. I'm trying to remember.
Now you're just showing off because you sounded better in your living room than the recorded version of that piece.
Oh no, it gets some of the notes I can't hit, but I'm trying to think. The name is escaping me of who sings that. Whoever is listening to this podcast.
Yeah, somebody knows what it is. Just go ahead and put on social media the title of the song and who the artist is.
I'm going to feel really embarrassed. I'm like typing on my computer. Christmas is the time of year. But hey, I'd rather someone else engage. Let's have some fun. Someone say hi and say who you think it is.
Somebody tell everybody who's listening right now on social media what the title of this song is and who performed it.
Yes.
You got a Christmas song under your belt, right? Is this one of your favorites? I said, you have a Christmas song under your belt. Is that one of your favorites?
Christmas 93 is the title of the song. It's out on, the Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, anywhere you stream music. But I wrote it. The reason it's special is because I wrote it using partially my grandfather's poem called Christmas 93. And my grandfather writes poems all the time for Christmas cards, for birthday cards, for just moments in time, and it's amazing. He can remember literally every one of them. We want to make a book of them. I think he's a hairdresser by trade, but he should have been just a poet, in my opinion. But I took some of his lyrics and put it together to make this kind of somber but hopeful song about Christmas and what it means to you.
It sounds like you got your songwriting abilities passed down to you genetically if they come from your grandfather's ability to write poetry.
Oh, I think I did. That definitely added to it. When you say that, I do have to share this one story.
Go for it.
During Christmas, we'll go see my grandfather, and he does this thing every year, my Papa John, where he writes out these poems that are essentially a scavenger hunt throughout his house. And sometimes they end up with, a little bit of fire or balloons blowing up or something at the end. And each piece of the scavenger hunt may have like a dollar bill or something in it. And that's the Christmas gift by the end. Sounds
like much fun.
It's so much fun. And and just the poems themselves, they're not really poems, but just the rhymes that he puts in these scavenger hunts and these clues are just special in themselves. The way he words things, that's just figuring out what he meant is half the fun, you know?
Yeah. Your grandfather, your grandparents sound really cool, but I want to make sure I just heard you correctly. Not only is your grandfather a poet, but your grandfather is Papa John, the guy who created Papa John's Pizza?
Oh, totally. No.
No, I'm messing with you. That would be pretty cool though, because I know what you guys will be eating at your house on Christmas Eve. I said, I know what Papa John would be serving at his house on Christmas Eve if that was the case. Hey, you got a couple of songs out. They're new releases and they're doing really well. Talk about Wildflower and then tell me about Rescue. Let's hear about these two songs that just came out.
Yeah. So I released Wildflower in July and Rescue just in October. I kind of see them as sister songs. They're very different when you listen to them. One is upbeat and fun. The other is more pensive and thoughtful. But I feel like they embody vulnerability and resiliency. Rescue is the vulnerability. Wildflower is the resiliency, and it's something that is something I deal with in my life of those moments where you need to be vulnerable but also strong. With Wildflower, it's all about being a little wildflower. They're a tough little flower. They get blown everywhere, kicked around, and they always seem to survive. Unless you plant them in my dad's yard, they never survive there for some reason. The deer always eat them. And Rescue is all about needing to reach out, not needing, but being brave enough to reach out to someone when you need help. I think that's something, especially the last couple of years, we've all been more cognizant of, is that we need to not be afraid to reach out to people and say, hey, I need a helping hand. I need a moment where I'm rescued and where I'm taken care of. And also the same, don't be afraid to go reach out to someone else, especially Christmas time. It's in time when so many of us have family members, but not everyone does. I think that's really important, maybe just to text someone and reach out and say Merry Christmas. Yeah. Or Happy Hanukkah, whatever,
Absolutely. People's emotional, their emotional conditions run hot and cold, but not very much in the middle during Christmas time. Some people, this is the greatest time of the year. For others, this is by far the worst time of the year, and they're just trying to survive the holidays because it's got a lot of really painful memories associated with it. You just described a beautiful combination, Zoe, of being vulnerable and resilient at the same time. And in fact, as I'm listening to you today, I'm hearing you use words like you're anxious and even depressed because of what's happening to your hearing that you have absolutely no control over. And even worse, don't even know what tomorrow holds for your hearing. That itself would cause a lot of people to just withdraw, kind of pull themselves out of the spotlight. But the fact that you're willing to continue to write songs, continue to make music, continue to pursue your passion in spite of some of your medical challenges, man, I'm so impressed. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about ladies that struggle with self-esteem. And I'm thinking Zoe is sitting here describing how to overcome some really challenging issues that could seriously undermine a woman's self-esteem. There's dudes that face self-esteem too. They just don't like to admit it. Maybe women are more willing to admit it. So can you talk to the people that are listening right now that are struggling with some real self-esteem issues? Because you could have just completely withdrawn and, not pursued your passion because of the hearing loss. So would you talk to people that are struggling with this right now?
Oh, yes. This is a topic I love to talk about, something that I experience. And I don't know if you can get through life without experiencing it at some point. It hits us all, sometimes harder towards others than, but it's something that we all experience in some way. And I hope that is comforting as well, that you're not alone. I think that's really important to remember, that as hard as it may feel, there is someone out there who's felt the way you feel, and it's it's a normal process of being a human. But with self-esteem, I think with the hearing loss side of it, there were times where it sounds crazy saying it now, but I felt like no one would love me. You know, I wouldn't find the perfect guy. Like those, you know, everyone thinks I'm not very smart. You know, anytime I go out, I just stare blankly at people. You know, there are times where that happens. I've had people laugh at me thinking I'm not deaf, like I'm just making a joke. I've had that multiple times where I'm genuinely trying to hear them. And those sorts of things make me personally not want to go out. I do have a little of my mother in me, who is the most social person in the world, so that helps. But I also have my dad in me. They're perfect opposites. But I think, I don't know, it doesn't have to be hearing loss, it doesn't have to be a disability at all. With social media, I think we compare ourselves as women especially a lot. I'm trying to be mindful of not using like filters that alter my face, things of that nature even that change, you know, who I am or who I want to present myself as. I think it's hard though. I think that growing up in a social media world especially makes it that much harder. It's wonderful. We get to talk to each other because of it. But I guess if you are feeling that way, don't be afraid to reach out to a friend. You can reach out to me even. I have social media. I've got direct message. I'm more than happy to say hi. And just maybe every day write something about yourself that you love. And if you can't figure out anything, call someone who cares about you and let them write it for you and let them write that list. I think that's something I have to do. I have to call my mom all the time and say, you know, hey, I am feeling horrible today. I feel this about myself, that about myself, or call a friend and say that. And yeah, just don't be afraid to do that. I think that's the number one, is just talking about it. Don't let it all be bottled up inside you.
Yeah. By the way, Zoë, dudes do this too. They measure themselves against one another, and then they feel totally inadequate because the other dude that they're looking at on social media has the perfect life, when everybody in the universe knows that life's not perfect, but the social media profile really looks perfect. I think there's a lot of power in what you just said, though. You described how just losing your hearing could make you impact your sense of self-worth, or how you thought people viewed you, even in ways that had nothing to do with your hearing. And I hope the person that's listening right now that's struggling with some self-worth or some self-esteem issues are learning a really powerful lesson from you. Those kinds of things, they're not connected. Don't listen to that inside voice that says you're not worth anything because you got some problems or you've been struggling a little bit.
Yeah, and most of the time this is a great example, I guess, if you want to pair it back to hearing loss. I have tinnitus, which is a constant ringing in my ears. It's high pitched and it's annoying, but and a lot of people get that when they have hearing loss. But if I think about it, it gets worse. It's my brain making the ringing sound because my hearing loss, it is trying to make up for it somehow. So if I think about it, it gets worse. It's worse than it's ever been. And I think that what you feed is what grows, you know? So as much as you can, try to feed the good in your life, even if it's just 1% a day, one little tiny little percent of something good. And that tinnitus will die down.
Yeah, look at that. You just a moment ago, you used a statement that I don't think I've heard very often. I think it's really wise what you've said. You used the word brave and said, be brave enough to reach out to other people. Some people, they just have they've been taught that it's a sign of weakness to let somebody know that you're hurting or to let somebody know that you need help. But you just said the word brave. Why do you use the word brave when you're telling people to reach out?
I love that you took note of that. That's so true.
It's so important. Yeah, look at it. It's right there in my notes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel this way too. There are times where I feel like, I tell everyone all about myself and how I'm feeling, they're going to think less of me. They're going to think I'm weird, or crazy, whatever they're going to think. But hey, if that's how people are going to think, then you don't need that person in your life anyway. But it is a brave thing to say how you're feeling. I genuinely believe it is. And if someone were to come to me, if a friend said, hey, I'm having trouble, I see them as a stronger person because of it. I don't see them as something less. I mean, and that may be, take a minute to find your people that that you can be that confident with, but just, I'm not the best at explaining it. I just know, I promise you that you are brave when you do that. And people that have a good eye and a good heart will take note of it. They will see that in you as being brave.
I'm taking note of it right now. When you made that statement, I was thinking, this woman is very wise. So I want to just add to what you said. I'm just going to tell you, if you're listening right now and you're the kind of person that feels like, I cannot admit my weaknesses because people will think less of me, you're actually making life worse for yourself. It takes courage, but it is a big step in the right direction for you to say, hey, I need to tell a friend or somebody really close to me that I'm struggling so that maybe they can come alongside me and help me in an area where I'm struggling. Don't be the guy or the gal that doesn't let anybody, that makes it look like you got it all put together, because you don't. I don't. Nobody does. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Be brave. Reach out. Tell people when you're struggling. It's all good. Hey, Zoe, people that have heard this broadcast, but they're not familiar with you, how do they get connected? First of all, how do they find your music? Secondly, how do they get connected with you personally?
Yes. So finding my music is easy. Whatever streaming platform you use, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Deezer, or just any of them, my music should be on it. Just look up Zoë Nutt, Zoe. If you want to get connected on social media in another way, I am always on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and I also have an email list. If you go to the link in my bio on Instagram or my website, it always leads you to the email list somehow.
We'll put in the notes to this show, hey, if you're listening, we'll put in the notes to this show how you can find her social media platforms, go to her website, how you can find her music. Awesome. But tell everybody one more time again, if they want to start following you, how they can get connected on your email list.
Yes. So if you go to my website, zoenutt.com, the email list is at the bottom of that page. And if you go to my Instagram or Facebook bio, it will also lead you to a button that says newsletter. And that's where I'm hoping to start, sharing even more in-depth stuff about myself and that maybe you wouldn't get on social media.
Yeah, so some of the good stuff is on the email list. That's what you're saying. You got to get on the email list if you want the good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, you should be on all of it. I mean, if you're going to be a fan, you might as well.
That's right. If you're going to be a fan, go all the way in and be her fan and by jumping on her email list. Zoe, you've helped one or two people during this episode, no question in my mind, that are struggling with some doubts, some self-esteem, some anxiety issues. But I also want people to know there have been some folks in the past that have had hearing problems like you, and they've reached out to you. Are you okay with people that connect with you saying, hey, I think I'm going through something similar?
Oh, for sure. A lot of people reach out to me about that. And I'm trying to find a way to hopefully streamline some of my thoughts and maybe in a blog form as well to really share that info in depth with people. But please reach out. I love that. I love building this community. And I mean, let's be honest, hearing loss is an invisible disability. It's something you can't see. So sometimes you just got to say, hey, I got it too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's strength in numbers. And when people realize, oh, she has the same problem that I do, that can really help. Go ahead, talk about Instagram.
I was just going to say Instagram seems to be the easiest way to get a hold of me in that way, to reach out. It's the platform I'm on the most. So that's my recommendation.
Well, Zoe, I want to say thanks. Tomorrow night when chestnuts are roasting on an open fire, I hope you have a great Christmas Eve. But thanks for taking the time to be on this episode of Unbeatable with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a wonderful part of my day, and let's do it again sometime.
That sounds great. We'll see you. Hey, thanks for joining us for this episode of Unbeatable. I hope you were challenged by what Zoë said. It takes real courage. It's a brave man or a brave woman who is willing to reach out and tell somebody when they're struggling. And if you've just found this podcast for the first time, did you know that you can follow us on social media? We're pretty much everywhere. If you just type in @Unbeatable Podcast, you'll be able to find our social media platforms. And Zoë has an email list, so do we. I would love to get you connected and help you become part of the Unbeatable Army. You can join that email list by going to unbeatablearmy.com. Now, for this Christmas, we're going to end this episode with the rest of Zoë's song. I hope you love the rest of the song, and I hope you have a great Christmas.
Can't you see I'm reaching? I need